All right, welcome to the very first episode of Planet MJ here on the Earnestly podcast. I'm your host, Earnest EJ Christian. As we now we're doing a brand new series on the podcast where we talk about all things Michael Jackson, the music, the legacy, the impact of this guy's career. And this is the first episode, as this week we'll be celebrating, not only celebrating, but we're going to be honoring Michael, as this week, the 25th of June, will be the 20th anniversary of his passing. Of course, left this earth on June 25th, 2009. Of course, we're joined here by my brothers here. As always, we talk all things Michael with my man, Matthew Allen, music journalist, who's back in the game, of course. Love to see you hanging back in the game again. Look happy, looking great. By the way, happy birthday, 44th birthday recently. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, EJ. Thanks for having me back. I'm so glad to be back.
Yep, and also joined by my other brother there too. Also, my boy loves Michael, loves wrestling, everything. You name it. We have everything a lot in common. My man, other music writer as well too. Also, Chris Lacy with us. Chris, what's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you having me back. I'm ready to dive in. Let's go.
Okay, we are hopefully have Jael Ruck with us too. Also, she's also the editor in chief at Decked Up magazine, but she's having a little issues right now on her end right now. She says she'll try to jump in as much as she can. But if we have her on here, hopefully we'll be able to talk to her for a little bit about all things. So we've got a lot of things to talk about Michael. Obviously, look, the biopic just came out 2 months ago. The whole world's still going nuts over that thing. So we'll talk about the biopic in a second. Reflect on Michael's, obviously 17 years without him. And also Netflix had a documentary themselves came out. They want to get their clamps into the Michael thing, money machine. So they put up a documentary, which I did not watch. And honestly, I was going to watch it. Honestly, I don't have the energy to watch it now, bro. Honestly. So we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about the biopic. Now, I've already done a review on the show already about how I feel the biopic. Obviously, I know my wife and I did a whole review on it. Even though she didn't see the movie though, but I told her everything about it. And she gave her two cents based on what I told her on our Shirt Space episode back in April, late April, of course. But Chris and Matt, we haven't spoken about us three in a while, at least about a year, roundtable style. So let's talk about the biopic in general. Open up, because I know Matt, especially you, I know you're excited about getting things off your chest. Your thoughts on the Michael Jackson biopic that's now closing on $1 billion, by the way, which I told you was going to happen.
Yeah, you did, and I have to say, I know I was being a Debbie Downer between the three of us. Like, we're all in a group chat. I was being the Debbie Downer when it came to like the movie like being successful, because I was just cautiously optimistic. Because number one, I was afraid because of the fact that Graham King was attached to it as a producer and what he did for Bohemian Rhapsody. As much as I was entertained by Bohemian Rhapsody, it was not like my favorite biopic, just because of how much I know about Queen. And EJ, you being another huge Queen fan.
You
can co-sign this. So I was very worried about what he was going to do with the Michael Jackson biopic. And then when the reviews came out from the critics, it was just so scathing. I really didn't I knew people were going to review it poorly in terms of like the trades and everything. I didn't expect it to be a unified front. I really think that they all got into a room and decided, no matter what you actually think, you need to hate this movie and hate it for a very specific reason.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, but despite that, it had a huge opening, and it's had huge staying power. So many people have seen it multiple times, and I'll elaborate more on that in a minute. I've seen it one time, and here's what I'll say about the movie, and I'll be as diplomatic as possible, but also I'll let the gloves off a little bit. So, didn't love this movie, just personally.
So real quick,
go ahead.
You to set up real quick. When we spoke about it, you gave it a 6 out of 10, right? Or 6.5 out of 10 last?
Yeah, but I give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
I give the movie a 6.5 out of 10. I'm on first watch, because I'll put it this way. I'm going to start it by this way. All right. Critics absolutely hated this movie. Fans absolutely love this movie. They're both wrong. That's what I would say about it. The critics are wrong and the fans are wrong.
Okay.
The critics are wrong because they hate it because of the fact that it's Michael Jackson, and they're going to hate it irregardless because they're expecting some sort of I might as well just say it. They're expecting some sort of like really like this sort of like gay snuff film of Michael Jackson walking around with his genitalia out, like just raping children, because that's what they think that the type of person that he was. And the fact that the movie didn't show that, they were very disappointed because they had the Vaseline ready and they couldn't get
any clue of that whatsoever. Anything touch on the allegations when in fact the movie.
Yeah, the fact that they didn't touch the allegations because, you know, the critics needed a reason to, you know, ejaculate because that's what they do when they think about Michael Jackson. You know, it's like, oh, we have to make him feel like, you know, we have to destroy his legacy because he's a black man that's the biggest star in the world. And we have to make sure that everyone thinks of him as a child molester, despite the fact that he, you know, was found innocent, he was found not guilty on all counts, despite the fact that the FBI said they found absolutely no evidence after a more than a decade search, despite the fact that Leaving Neverland facts were debunked by several sources, and so on and so forth. The critics just really hate Michael, and also have some deep-rooted demons in and of themselves.
You know what gets real quick on that though, is that, and I'll let you continue because I just want to explain it. Is that if you're a critic and you're trying to show like independent thought, like wouldn't you try harder to do it? Like you're not even pretending anymore.
Because they don't have to. Listen, as a person as a person who's been a professional music journalist for 18 years,
right?
I'm telling you, in this business, they know they don't have to. It's just like politicians. They'll tell you to your face, we are lying to you. We are being self-serving. And what are you going to do about it?
Right.
It's not like you're not going to watch because you're an idiot and you're going to watch it because you need to hate watch it because you have to be able to look at something bad to make yourself feel better about something. And so that's the reason why things like the Joe Budden podcast and Howard Stern and reality TV exists, because people need something bad to look at because they feel bad about their lives. And so with critics, they have mistaken cynicism for intelligence. And they realize that that's what makes people buy newspapers or get clicks and all this other stuff. We have to make it bad so that people will read it, or they don't even have to read it. They just have to click on it. And they just have to put it in the algorithm by mentioning us on Threads and on Twitter and on IG and all that other stuff. That's just going to put our advertising money up. Mm-hmm. So they don't care. They don't care about being unbiased and about being so forward-facing with being biased. They don't, because they know no one's going to do anything about it, because people are going to hate read it, or they're going to post about it on TikTok and all that stuff, even though people realize that they're making it worse. So that's the reason why that is. But critics are wrong, because this movie is not like the worst biopic on the face of the earth. It's in history. It's far from it. It's not. They're just up in their pants that they couldn't see a film that depicted Michael Jackson molesting children, because they have fantasies about it themselves that they don't want to deal with.
And not only that, they pretend they're stupid. Like they act like we're not stupid. Like they don't know that the original film, before they made the modifications because of the reshoots, because of the NDAs, that they were going to address it. You're
wrong.
You know that. You knew that. You chose not to report that because you guys are having an agenda in place.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They do know. They do know.
Right.
That they had to change the third act, and they act like it anyway because they know people will believe it. Donald Trump just said, "Oh, the reflecting pool is bad because the Democrats vandalized it," which is like completely not true and can be proven to be not true. But there are enough stupid people who are MAGA hat wearers that will believe him just because they heard him say it. Yeah. It's the same thing with critics of
all this stuff has seeped into everyday life, including politics too. Also, the unintelligence and really, quite frankly, the laziness of people. You know what I'm saying?
Absolute laziness and apathy. It's really what it is. And so they know that, so they prey on it. You know, I remember like I'm sure it says somewhere in scripture, it says the evil people in the room are often the smartest people in the room. You know, Kendrick Lamar said it best when he talked about in the song "For Sale" on Butterfly, when he was talking about Lucy, who's an embodiment of Satan.
Yeah.
And he said, but remember, he knows the Bible too.
Yep, exactly.
So it's just that whole thing. Like we read your playbook of goodness, and we're going to use it against you and manipulate you against it.
Yeah.
To fit our needs. And that's what the critics do, not just for the Michael movie, but for everything. You know, I read in Vulture magazine, somebody had to do an article where they had to rank all of Michael Jackson's songs from worst to best, which they do with everything. They did that with Sade songs. They did that with Key and Peele sketches.
Of course.
The guy that wrote it, this white trouser stain, who was a Metallica fan, no offense.
It's okay. I'll take it.
Had nothing but terrible things to say about all the songs and constantly was bringing up the allegations. And I'm like, that's completely out of context for what this article needed to have. Exactly. You're talking about ranking the songs. But you're even talking about how the songs are bad, even though the songs are high on the list.
And that was the problem with a lot of these reviews too. Also, that we were hearing, because like they weren't reviewing the movie; they're reviewing what they thought should have been the movie. Look, and I agree with you. Like, if you have a problem with stuff, fine, but you're not reviewing the actual movie, what was actually in the movie, and that was my problem from the get go. So. Absolutely. Real quick, let me get Chris in here real quick, because I know Chris been waiting for a little bit. Chris, real quick, because I'll let Matt finish up also too a little bit. But Chris, your initial thoughts on the movie?
Yeah. Well, before I go in, I'll let Matt finish his thought. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Okay, Matt. Go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
So yeah, the critics are wrong because of the fact that no, they were not going to include the allegations, and they know why they couldn't legally include the allegations, which will probably get cleared up by the time we get to the second movie.
Right.
But number two, fans are wrong because this is far from a great biopic. There's more holes in this script than there is in a slice of Swiss cheese.
Ooh.
Okay. I'm not gonna mince my words here. This script, I could have written a better script than this, and I've never written a script in my life. Okay. As a matter of fact, they need to hire me to write the script for Michael 2, because not only will I make it better than Michael 1, but the way that I'll do it will fix the first movie. So
I agree. And for the record, I believe you. I believe you. I'm not saying I'm not mincing words. I believe you.
I know. But just to end my thoughts, so we can get Chris in here.
Yeah.
There's so many scenes in here that are completely without context. Motown 25 is in there without any context.
That bothered me too.
The meeting of Quincy Jones is in there without any context. The transition from Victory to Bad, zero context. The Beat It and Thriller video creations, zero context. And it's just they leave so much out, because what they did is that when people say, oh, this is not for diehard fans, this is for people who are just getting to know Michael. No, it's the other way around. It is for diehard fans, because they took for granted the fact that Michael Jackson's story is so well known that people would watch it and be able to fill in the blanks with their own knowledge of his history, which is a complete disservice. And to me, it is a disservice to what became or wound up being an otherworldly acting debut from Jafar Jackson. Chris, the floor is yours.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I appreciate that. And Matthew, thank you for referencing that article. I read the same one. It was by Bill Wyman from Vulture, where he ranked every song. And like you said,
I got to see that.
There's no exaggeration. I think it's behind a paywall at this point, but Matthew's not exaggerating. Like, the vast majority of the song descriptions, even when he got to his top 10, he was still taking shots at Michael. I'm like, bro, why did you even bother doing the article? Like, that's seriously
exactly
the entire piece.
Exactly. And it's not just Michael. That Vulture and New Yorker, they do that with a lot of black musicians. It's the same magazine.
Which is a shame, because I love the New Yorker.
That was terrible.
I love the New Yorker. I really love a lot of their lifestyle stuff and whatnot. But God, it's aggravating. It's aggravating, bro.
I'm like I said, I'm not gonna mince words here. I think that in most cases, white writers shouldn't write about black art. That's just how I feel. Very, very rarely Do you get like a Rob Kenner from Vibe, Dan Charnas, who wrote the Dilla book? They're one of some of the few exceptions, but I really don't think that white
stay
writers
your
should write about black stuff. I mean, look at
your lane.
the whole thing with John Carmanica and the Popcast
Right.
and how they dealt with what's his name, Jack Harlow, and all that stuff. I could go down a whole rabbit hole about that dude and about you know that whole thing, but I won't. But I just don't think that white folks should write about black art of any sort, just in my opinion. For a lot of reasons. Like I said, there's some exceptions.
Watch white clip this podcast and say, "Oh, a bunch of 3 black dudes in the podcast saying."
Look, it is what it is.
We're not saying that. We're saying do better. That's what we're trying to tell you. Do better.
Well, you're saying do better. I'm saying stop.
you say you had your chance. Goodbye.
I'm saying stop because there's black writers who write terrible stuff about black art too. But let that be our problem. You know what I'm saying?
Stay in your lane, I guess.
Deal with that. Yeah, exactly. Because here's a crazy thing. There's so many black writers who can write eloquently and with a lot of respect and knowledge of culture when it comes to white art. Like EJ, I know you could probably write your ass off on something about Queen or something about Metallica or the Core Four. You know what I'm saying? But you let a white dude that's not a part of the culture write about Michael Jackson or LL Cool J or Eric B. and Rakim, and they're gonna I'm reading this book right now called Black Music by Amiri Baraka, and he talks about the fact that in 1963 he wrote this about how a lot of white writers are only writing about black art from a technical standpoint and not taking into consideration the culture that they came up with and how that literally shaped their music, and they're not injecting that into how the music is played and why the music is created. They're thinking about it in the terms of, like if you watch like some white expert talking some documentary, it's like, when he changed from A major to a F sharp minor or C sharp minor, it was just so glorious. It's like that has its place, but they're also like neglecting to talk about, he wrote this song because his father passed away and this happened in his neighborhood and this guy got shot because there was a black guy that got shot by a white cop, and it's or whatever it is. All that stuff has to be considered,
and listen,
and they don't consider it, and because they don't know or they don't care.
And that's the thing. And learning what I learned about Jan Wenner in the last couple of weeks now, especially too in detail, it's like you can't tell me this shit ain't going on behind the scenes, bro. You just can't tell me shit.
Don't even get me started. Just
after you told me about
after you told me
about that guy, bro, I did like a little deep dive the last couple of weeks per a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, and the deep dive, and I'm like, bro, this dude is a mess, man.
And he never has hidden his I really think that he had a picture of John Lennon above his wall. On his ceiling, the way that people had Farrah Fawcett on their ceiling
wouldn't surprise me.
Went to sleep. John Lennon was on the cover of Rolling Stone 3 times in the first 10 issues.
Yeah.
And he's been on the cover 30 times during and since his death. Michael Jackson's been on the cover 6 times, and he sat for an interview once. So, and one of them was a black, minstrel caricature. So,
yeah, I remember that one. It was 87. Was 87?
Yeah, that was 87, 88, like Michael Jackson in Fantasyland. I wrote a piece about it in my old Substack. I might resurrect it. But but don't get me started on Jan Wenner. Go to for all you out there, look up my article on Jan Wenner on in thegrio.com when that whole controversy with him happened with the Masters book, and I explain just how I feel about that guy and how he gets stuff wrong. He's a key example of why white people have been emboldened to be able to talk about black art without doing the cultural homework. It is because of that man and that publication.
And it's important. Once again, it's important when people say, why are we talking about Michael? Because Michael Jackson being the biggest black artist in history of music, a lot of what has been coded around Michael, especially the last 30 to 40 years, even longer, starts here with how he's being reported.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to, like I said, the cultural thing. Oh, he's turning white, so he must not want to be black. Even Greg Tate, God rest his soul, one of my mentors, a guy who's always nice to me, who always showed up for me. One of his first articles with Village Voice was one of the most scathing, disgusting, and hurtful, purposely hurtful articles I've ever read about Michael by anybody black or white. And Greg Tate is as black as was as black as they come. But he was coming, but I understood he was coming from a place of hurt. This is a guy that grew up loving Michael Jackson, and seeing him turn to a white guy, or seeing his skin color change with absolutely no explanation, that had to have hurt his feelings. And he was writing from that place, because years later when Michael Jackson died, Greg Tate wrote the most poignant, gorgeous, heartfelt eulogy about Michael Jackson in that.
Do you apologize for what he said?
Not to me. That's one of the things I regret not asking him when he was still alive, because like I said, he's a guy that I ran into a lot, who mentored me in a way that he didn't have to. And that's the one thing I always wanted to ask him that I never got to ask him until he passed away, was like, how did you reconcile writing that article and then championing Michael Jackson in the way that you did afterwards? Because the crazy thing is that the article was about Bad, and he talked all kinds of shit about that album. I even mentioned it in my article. In my article about the 30th anniversary of the Bad album, when I wrote for The Root, I mentioned the context of why that was his prime, but people didn't see it as his prime because of the critics. And Greg Tate, that quote I used from him, where he said something like, because since God don't like ugly, the album title Bad is a perfect explanation for what's on the album, because the songs aren't good.
That's interesting.
It's completely. I wrote down, critics felt like the only way that they could restore Michael's black skin was to drop their pants and wipe their ass with him. So,
wow. And that's
I said it. I didn't say it as crudely in the article. That was my first draft, and then I said, "There's no way they're gonna let."
No, of course not.
I changed it to drop trowel and wipe their backside with him, instead of saying drop their pants and wipe his ass with him to bring his brown skin back. I wish I would have did it back then. Like, this is on my Substack, I'm gonna be a lot less sensitive.
As you can. Chris, that's a question. Chris, do you remember what you gave the movie the rating?
Yeah, on the first night I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but since then I've given it 3 out of 5 stars.
Okay, so you readjusted. So I did also too. I went 7.5 out of 10 initially, and I dropped it down to 7, even close to 6.75 out of 10. So your thoughts on the movie real quick. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and real quick before I dive into my quick movie review, because again, I will keep it brief because I know your listeners are very familiar with your take and other folks. The comment that was made a moment ago about white people shouldn't cover black art, I lean more in your direction, EJ, than I do Matthew's. And here's why I say that, is that as somebody who is half black, half white, if we went by that standard, then I'm not allowed to have a say in the conversation. So I think it comes down to, if more folks cared about getting it right versus being right, that would matter more, as far as like, okay, we don't have to just speak about black art from a technical standpoint. If we do take into consideration the cultural piece, like you mentioned, Matthew, I think that there is space for that, but at least just show that you've done your homework. If you have a negative opinion about the art, that's fine, but at least show your work. I think that's my main stance on that. So I personally would be careful to say, hey, white people can't talk about black art, because then they can reverse it on us and say, okay, well, now if you're black, you can't talk about white art.
They do it anyway, though, Chris.
I understand that. And that's why I'm saying that if we care more about getting it right versus being right, we would see more progress on that topic.
Right. And I'm with Chris on that one for record too also. I think the reason Matt has his position, though, is that because he's, especially him, being in that industry for almost 2 decades, I think, and seeing the parts and the moving parts move, and having touched and felt some of these same personalities that have done these things, I think it hits a little bit different with him, because he was an insider in a way that I guess you and I are not, Chris. In that way, I think that's why his passion for that is a little different than you and I. I agree with you, Chris, for the record. I agree with 100% what you said there. I just think Matt's position is more so from a place of experience, and he's dealt with this shit for 2 decades now. So he's coming out of this like, wow, I'm done with you guys.
And I get that, which is why, in most cases when it comes to music journalism, I always, I look to get Matthew's perspective, because he has been in that industry longer than I have.
Yes.
So, I've been doing freelance writing for 10 years, which is very different from what he's done in the circles that he's been in. So I try to learn as much as I can from Matthew, but just on that particular stance, I tend to lean more in your direction, EJ, than I do with Matthew when when it comes to like so and so can't talk about fill in the blank because they're not from that culture. I think there is space for that. You just have to show your work.
And that's fair, and that's fair, EJ and Chris. And like I said, because of people like Rob Kenner, because of people like Dan Charnas, they've shown that there can be white people and white journalists who do the work, because they did the work, and they know that they have their connection to the art is not the same as the connection that someone like you, me, or EJ would be, but they don't let that deter them from actually showing the reverence and respect and adding the cultural context of it. So yes, there are absolutely exceptions of that rule. I just think that I'm coming from a more I don't want to use the word bitter, but I guess that's the only word I can use at this moment.
There's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong saying that, though.
Coming from a more bitter place because of the infrastructure because I understand the infrastructure of the thing, and there is some an unspoken premeditation to sort of basically wear your ignorance on your sleeve. You know, like I said, in Vulture, they wrote this article about how LL Cool J didn't get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on his first ballot, and they wrote a whole article about why that was a good idea. And that to me is completely and utterly just like, look, freedom of press, whatever, you can write whatever you want, but don't be surprised when someone comes up on you and spits in your face because of something you wrote.
Yes, and I'd be okay with that in a sense too. Also, but especially when you're irresponsible in doing that too. Also, you're irresponsible with your words. Also, Chris.
Yeah, I'll dive into it. Yeah, I know. I've been kind of sitting in the back here.
It's okay. It's okay. I want to feel part of the conversation, obviously.
Yeah.
So, we're going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for the most part, I do believe that the biopic got more right than it did wrong. Of course, I'm with you, Matthew. There's a lot of things that I would have liked to capture in that 2-hour runtime. But I do think it got more right than it did wrong. And the biggest thing that they got right is not only did they capture Michael's humanity, but they were able to cast Jafar, who I don't think anybody else could have done that role better than him.
I agree with 100%. 100%. I look at it now like no one else could have done this role. Nobody else.
Right. Because I was convinced since I was like, Wiley Draper, he may be the standard for forever. I don't know if anybody will ever be able to top it exactly. God rest his soul. But Jafar did his uncle justice as far as capturing the humanity of Michael, and even watching the behind the scenes, stuff. If anybody bought the digital purchase, I went back and watched, that hour long featurette. It made me appreciate the fact that Jafar got locked in and he was committed to doing the absolute best that he could. And there was a little bit of tension there, like Rich and Tone, Michael's choreographers, weren't exactly sure if Jafar was the right guy, but he put in work. Yeah, he put.
Was that revealed in the digital behind the scenes? I watched
Yes, that's where I got that from.
Okay.
And so after, so Jafar, he was asking Rich and Tone and saying, hey, do you guys think I have it? And they were trying to break it to him easy. He's like, okay, give me about 2 to 3 weeks. And then when they came back and Jafar put on I think he said about 15-20 minute performance of just doing Michael stuff, then that's when everyone was like, okay, he's got it. Like he put in the work, he's got it. So that's the biggest glowing compliment that I can give. But here's the similar feedback that I would give, very, very similar to what Matthew said, is that if I had the green light to tell Michael's story, I'd build my script on one question: can you be that famous and that faithful to your craft at the same time? Because that right therein lies the tension. Because on the one side, Michael wanted to be the biggest star the world had ever seen, but on the other side, his level of fame created a burden that nobody should ever have to carry. And if you cut between those emotional extremes, we get the musical genius, but we see the public crucifixion all in the same frame. And one of the biggest issues I had with the biopic is that they made the creative process look like a cartoonist jump from good idea to finished hit. And I'm like, guys, you got to dig into that stuff. And it shouldn't feel like we're watching someone. It should feel like we're watching someone fight to create and express themselves, because that's what it was for Michael. It was a fight for him to do what he did at his level every time out, because the standard was so high, not only for himself, but what the world also held Michael to. So that is my nutshell review of the biopic. I hope that because of the fact that the biopic is about to make $1 million, the sequel will have more runway for them to really dig in and show us what it was like to be in the studio with him. Show what it was like to be on set with him when he did certain short films. Show us what it was like when he was, in Neverland and he was contemplating all these different things, and just like help us feel the weight of what he's going through. And Matthew, I love what you put up the other day, because I left a comment and I know that you agreed with it. You said, what have you noticed over repeat viewings of Michael? And the one thing that I noticed is that it would show a scene, but then the very next scene or a couple scenes later, it would tell you what it just showed you a couple moments ago. So for instance, when Jafar is sitting with Bubbles and he's reading, Peter Pan, we see a moment of Jafar grabbing his nose and then looking at the off the wall cover. We're like, okay, we get he's insecure about his looks. In the very next scene, he's in the surgeon's office and he's saying, my face is asymmetrical. It's not symmetrical. It has to be perfect. I'm like, you guys just did a great bit of visual storytelling, but then now it's like you're telling the audience, we don't trust your intelligence, so let us tell you explicitly what just happened.
That's a very Chris.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the the coffin there. In terms of that example that you said with the visual storytelling, which I didn't even consider that deeply, but what you did say also before about them basically like fumbling the creative process.
Yes.
Like what made the transition, what makes Michael Jackson such a unique and peerless songwriter is the fact that so much of his work his most compelling songs come from a place of weariness and claustrophobia and paranoia and voyeurism. And they didn't tap into any of those things, even like they don't even have to be like it's like you said, they showed that they can do visual storytelling very well, and they could have done that, and they didn't dive into that at all. And the things that they did talk about that were compelling, they just did it sort of glibly. The whole idea of Michael Jackson's only friends are his animals, Louis, the Rosie the Python, Bubba, like the fact like this kid was a lonely kid and no one dealt with it. No one could see the signs like, yo, this kid is always talking to animals. He doesn't have friends with real people. Why is that? The fact that no one in his family picked up on that enough to say, hey, maybe we should do something about this or talk to him or get him some help. That could have been expounded upon, like his inability to connect with humans, his inability to trust adults, to trust his family. So much of that, you really, really did a great job with that, Chris. But here's a question I want to ask you, and EJ, I want to ask you the same thing.
Sure.
Starting with you, Chris. Mm-hmm. What was it? I mean, this is the same question for both of you. What was it that you noticed after the second time that you watched the film that made you drop the rating? Chris, you first.
What was it that made me want to drop the rating after the second viewing? I mean, it kind of goes into what we talked about at the top of the show. There's so much that we know about Michael because we have such a vast knowledge base. Like we've spent literally decades following this man's life and career. So again, I knew going in that I was not going to be fully satisfied with what they show because Michael's life, I mean, he lived several lifetimes in 50 years of life. So there's no way they're going to be able to capture all of that and capture the nuances that us, our crowd is looking for. So I already kind of knew going in that was going to be, the sticking point for me. And then over repeat viewings, it just became more obvious to me of like, man, like, okay, like how do we go from them jumping through Jackson 5 stuff to immediately 1978?
Thank you. That's the one.
I'm like, what about the Jacksons variety show? Like, show us like, him really showing like his full repertoire as a dancer, because so many people just know him for his iconic moves, but what about the tap dancing and all the things that we've seen him do to where he was like a comprehensive performer? Like there's a reason that, cats like us, we're like, okay, he's up there with, Bojangles. He's up there with Baryshnikov. He's up there with Fred Astaire. but they didn't show that in the biopic. And I'm like, okay, if the goal is to show him as a working musician and an entertainer, you've taken a huge piece of his legacy out to where nobody's going to be able to understand the weight of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Or at least show the struggle, between Motown and the Jacksons.
Yeah, right. No mention of Gamble and Huff or their struggle to write and produce their own music, which permeated throughout the entire film to the point where it became really caricature. The whole caricature of I have these ideas and I have to get them out. They repeated that so many damn times it became cartoonish, but they never actually did any real diving into the struggle that it was for him to write and produce his own music, which started when they left Motown.
Right. And Matthew, you talk about like insecurity and humanizing Michael. The acne issues were massive. Massive. I mean,
for years.
The Jacksons movie from '92 touched on that in a big way. That was a big deal. That shaped a lot of what.
See, this is why I think it should have been. They should have just did another series. If they would have did like a 10-episode or an 8-episode limited series.
But you know why they did it this way, right? Because
I know why.
$1 billion.
I know why.
That's why.
Yeah, exactly. But if they wanted to really do it right. Like I said, if I was in charge, I would have made it. I would have done it a few ways. I would have done either as a limited series, or I would have did straight Marvel. I would have made like a Michael Jackson cinematic universe, where you had multiple Michael Jackson movies and sequels, a Quincy Jones
they can still do that now
movie series and sequel. You had the villain origin story of John Bragg.
Oh God!
Listen, I'm
kind of kidding. I'm kind of kidding.
Though, that could be on the table now too, because Michael. Here's what we know right now in 2026. After everything we've gone through, him passing away, the allegations, leaving Neverland, Michael Jackson's business is still pretty good. Good or bad? Language here, Chris. People in a big way still give a fuck about Michael Jackson 70 years later. Whether you love him or hate him.
In a big way.
And that's claim.
And the thing about that is the fact that the musical was like the soft launch for the biopic.
And better biopic record. And better biopic.
You know what I'm saying? And even the musical did a better, more nuanced job
without question
of explaining like Michael Jackson's creative process, doing a much better job of talking about the complicated relationship between Michael and Joseph Jackson, and talking about how Joe's influence shaped Michael into the person that he was, because Michael saw so much of Joseph in himself. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why he moved the way that he did, because he knew that he was probably like Joe more than any of his other sons. And so, especially when it came to the business aspect of it and the discipline aspect of it. And the musical did an excellent job at that, so much so that it was actually surprising to me. Yeah. And they made Joe into this villainous, the guy. You ever watch the Penelope Pit Stop cartoons when the Paul Lynde played the bad guy with the big hat and the monocle? That's what Joe Jackson was.
That bothered me. And honestly, the funny thing about the Joe Jackson story in the biopic is that Joe was actually worse than what they portrayed. However, I don't like the fact that they don't give Joe, especially because Joe is a massive part of the story, here in the movie. He's probably the second most important character in the story, if we're being real honest here. There should be at least a little bit of section of why Joe was the way he was. He didn't just become this because he wanted to. I need a story why Joe Jackson was the way he was with his kids and with Michael. So it was very important.
MCU, you need a cinematic universe. So there's a Joe Jackson origin story movie.
It would not hurt to have the story start in 1940, 1950 something, when Joe was. Give it 5 minutes in front. But we need a Joe Jackson story to lead us into why he was the way he was.
Yeah, EJ.
That bothered me too also.
Yeah, and I'm glad, because I listened to the episode that you and your wife did, and I appreciate the fact that you brought that point up, because you're right, though. I mean, they made Joseph look like this cartoonish villain to the point of Yeah, like the one scene I think they really got right was when he was whipping young Michael with a belt before he called him Big Nose. Like that made me genuinely care about young Michael. And yes, it did tug at my heartstrings on how I look at Joseph. But to your point though, is like they made him so two-dimensional, or one-dimensional rather, I should say.
Correct.
That you're like, okay, why is Joseph that way? And what people tend to forget is that he had to come up during the pre-civil rights era.
Bingo.
And if you touch on that, again, you don't have to agree with how he went about it, but if you can understand, which is why I think Thanos was such a huge hit on the MCU, is like, you don't have to agree with how he got there, but at least you understand his philosophy. And to an extent, some people are like, okay, I kind of get where he's coming from. Like, if you can take that same approach with Joseph, of like, hey, whether you love him, hate him, or feel indifferent, he got his family out of the slums of Gary, Indiana. That is his greatest achievement, and it should be shown as such on screen. Like, you don't have to agree with what he did, but the fact of the matter is that he got his family out of Gary, Indiana, and he created a family that is the equivalent of entertainment royalty. Like, that's our royal family to us.
And there's a scene.
The Jackson story did a better job of fleshing out Joe's story in a way that this movie did not do that, unfortunately.
And there's one scene in the movie where that I felt like it was a poignant scene that was important, where Joe was right. It was when he asked him to do the victory tour. And he says, you want to be your own man, and you want to be surrounded by people that just say yes to you.
Yes.
Is that what you want? What kind of sense does that make? And he was right. But
we don't know that until years later. We don't know that until
we don't know it until years later. But that's what I said. The screenwriter took for granted the fact that we already know Michael's story, so they didn't bother to flesh it out in the script. But he was right in that one moment. But because he's this villainous character throughout the whole movie, it's like, you repel it when he actually does make a valid point.
Exactly.
So EJ, let me know. I asked Chris, let me know, what was it about the movie after you watched it the second time that made you dip your grade?
Well, the Joe thing immediately. Watching the Joe thing is especially was huge for me. The gaps between 71 and 78, like a lot happens there, man. And if the story's about Michael and about his process and about him developing as a man, you're going from 13-year-old to 20-year-old. You're basically skipping his entire teenage life. That's a massive. You're missing. Look, I don't expect him to go through each album, the Destiny album, the first two Jackson's albums. I don't expect that because look, you got 2 hours to fill. I get that, but again, you miss Acne. You missed the transition from Motown to Epic. You missed all that. There's so much there. The Jackson's Variety Show, which I get. You're not going to do that because of the rights issues. I get that. The Wiz, same thing. I understand that, but there's so much gaps there. My problem too also is that I thought they spent too much time on the and look, Jafar did a phenomenal job. So I'm separating two here. I'm separating the performance versus what should have been on the movie in the first place. They spent way too much time on Beat It and Thriller in the videos and all that. I thought that I didn't think the amount of time they did that was necessary to the movie.
Yeah.
Granted, Jafar was fantastic what he did.
Yes.
I know they wanted to highlight that. But I don't think the amount of time they put into that part was necessary, honestly.
Timeline wise, what I also had an issue with as far as the Motown 25 montage is that they were weaving in like MTV coverage, and then you have Michael at the 84 Grammys. It's like he can't be doing all of that and Motown 25 at the same time. Because
Thank you.
3.
But that's the Grammy,
which by the way happened. The Grammys happened after the fire.
Correct.
Yes, after the fire, exactly. That's Graham Nash. Sorry, not Graham Nash. That's Graham King, and all the getting the dates wrong that he did with the Queen movie, like having them sing "Never Can Say Goodbye" before they are signed with Motown. Yeah. Having them sing at some podunk festival or fair after they've had #1 hits with Motown.
Yeah,
and all this other stuff.
And then fast forwarding a little bit towards the end, to have Working Day and Night be this grand statement of Michael rebelling against Joseph.
I have a theory about that.
Wrong song.
Yeah,
I have a theory about that.
To the ground. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I have a theory about that. I
theory?
think that there had to have been some sort of issue with the songs, because with the publishing and the paperwork. Because if you notice, all of Michael's songs that are performed are his solo material. Despite
and
the
J5 of
contract.
course, and J5. Well, perform
When
you
they
performed
did
or
Working Day and Night instead of Shake Your Body Down to the Ground
Right.
on the Victory Tour, which is how
Right.
that happened. When they do the part where the Triumph Tour, he's singing Ben.
Mhm.
And it's like, but why? You know, you're performing with your brothers against your will, and they're showing you performing Ben, which did happen in real life, but it's just like, why? But I think there had to have been some sort of issue, even though they played a lot of the post Motown Jackson stuff as incidental music throughout the film. Like they played Dreamer from that first Gamble.
Which, by the way, for the record, real quick, one of the best things about the movie I will say, and it caught me off guard. They played like three. And you gotta be us three here. You gotta be a massive fan.
You gotta be a head to watch this.
Listen, to use a wrestling term here, Chris, I popped when I
Yeah, you
heard
gotta
things
mark
happen.
out.
I popped when I heard Dreamer. I even popped more when I heard Stop Dogging Around. I popped.
Yes.
Oh,
if you're
Dogging
casual,
Around, yeah.
But you got to be a massive hardcore fan to know those songs.
Hardcore, and they played the OG version of Dogging Around.
Yes.
And I know that, and I play that song regularly in my car. So I'm singing the song in the theater, and people look at me like, "What the hell?" Like, yeah, I know the song. I'm a massive fan. Don't mess with me.
No,
So I popped.
And what surprised me is that when my mom and I saw it for the first time, I was looking around to see if anyone would pop over "I Can't Help It" whenever he's talking to Louis in the backyard. And I did see a few people, like, they were kind of grooving to it. I'm like, okay, at least we got some off the wall fans up in the house.
Yes,
yes.
Here's what I'll say about the movie, though, for me, that's really hit me more than anything else. Like the stuff with Grand King, and Matt, you and I have been talking about this for years now, about we knew what we were getting, and we got what we got. And I'm okay with it at this point, because we know the Graham King philosophy and how he does things, and it works. It still works. It still sells. I can't hate on it. Where I'm probably more shocked by this whole thing is also given with Michael and how he's placed it on the world today, is the reaction, and not just reaction to fans, people who are either who like him maybe, or didn't like him, or maybe knew about him a little bit, but now there's this whole like philosophical psychology now on my social media now of Michael Jackson. People now are looking at Michael as an influence on humanity in a way to cut through the noise of 2026. Like, here's a man that was someone that was so different from the world, and a guy that we took for granted. And you see people having this come to Jesus moment now with Michael Jackson. That part, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see people all of a sudden say, "Oh my God, this guy's a wonderful human being." I didn't know that.
And it's long overdue.
Yeah, I agree. It is long overdue, because I mean, the man been asking for that for his whole life, and I mean, he put it plainly in songs like "Childhood." He's like, "Before you judge me, try hard to love me." So I don't see how any more obvious he could be. But and EJ and Matt, y'all probably saw the same thing I'm seeing, especially on Twitter, is that you have these teenage and 20-something-year-olds.
I was just going to say that,
projecting their own feelings onto Michael. Like there was a thread of people like they're diagnosing him as part of being on the autism spectrum. I'm like, there's nothing that supports that. That's you projecting mental health onto a man.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chris.
Yeah, is it possible? Sure. Is it possible? Sure. But is it probable? No, because you don't have any sources to back up what you're saying. You're just projecting your feelings onto somebody who can't speak for themselves. So that, to me, is very irresponsible.
It's just a reaction. Like, I just found out this morning, Billie Jean #1 again on global on Spotify. Again. I mean, this is something I'm talking about. Is earmarks. Moonwalk #1 around the world when it came out. The movie came out, the book. The song. I mean, again, this guy's been dead 17 years. It's insane, and it's fun. It's funny. 200. It's funny seeing these. I hate to use race on this one, but these like young 20-year-old white women and white people just like embracing Michael for the first time. Like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And I'm like, and I'm saying to myself, saying, I waited for this day for the last 30 years.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't imagine myself saying this, especially in a conversation like the one that we're having, is that I believe I have to give the estate credit for timing this out when they did, because we give them so much grief about timing and them just being, just so caught up in their own agenda. And it feels like they're missing the mark on a lot of things, but with the biopic and the timing of it, because I mean, we've known about it since 2019, when Grant King said, hey, I have the rights to tell the Michael Jackson story. So for 7 years, we've been waiting, and for everything to be happening the way that it is now, and it's, on its way to make $1 billion. I got to give the Michael Jackson estate some credit here, even though I have my grievances with him.
Yeah. And right. And that's why, and man, you and I spoke about this on a podcast back in February. And I said this to you. I'm not gatekeeping the guy. Look, if you want to come on board and be a fan and this and that, go right ahead, bro. I'm not gatekeeping this thing anymore, because because ultimately that's my goal. I don't care how great this movie is in terms of like, am I impressed as a fan? It doesn't matter. This movie's not going to change my fanhood whether it's good or not. I've seen really, really bad Michael Jackson depictions. Trust me, okay? Most of them are bad. That never changed my fan one bit, okay? I just want to see the reaction with people, how they embrace Michael Jackson, the person, at the end of the day. And the funniest thing ever, the Twister scene, of course. And the Twister scene has become now also like a big meme culture now. The last couple months.
Yes,
it's
absolutely
insane to me, bro.
I love the term "no Twister, no tour" was trending on TikTok, and I was laughing my ass off. That was so.
But the
funny.
fact that people can actually relate to use that scene and understand why it's important. Michael, his brother's now in their 20s, adults, some married, whatever. They care about other things. Michael's now at this point 20 years old himself, 21 years old. And yet he wants to play Twister with his brothers. It shows Michael Jackson's humanity again. This is why he was the way he was.
And then the fact that he did want to have that connection, because you got to remember, his only friends were his brothers. They were his only friends by his own admission.
Right.
So when he's growing up and becoming this solo artist and feeling distance between himself and his family and himself and other people. He even said in the thing, I got Twister, and they're laughing. He goes, well, it'll be like the old days. That's the little part of the dialogue that must not be overlooked. He says, it'll be like the old days.
Right.
And he's like, you guys are no fun anymore. Because it's like, okay, there's that, there he is trying to have a connection. Because, like I said, more than half his life, every time you saw Michael Jackson on stage, he was with his brothers. Michael Jackson only did 3 tours as a solo artist. Every other tour he's done, he was with his brothers. Even at the height of his fame with the Victory Tour, with Thriller, he was with his brothers. So he's probably seeing the disconnect begin to happen, or sensing it starting to happen as they're having their own lives, and he's not. And another thing, and speaking of which, another thing that I want to ask you guys both before we move on.
Yeah.
Do you think that they should have even tried to go forward with this movie knowing that they couldn't get the life rights to certain people, particularly Janet Jackson, Randy Jackson, and Diana Ross? Do you think that do you think it was a mistake that they even went forward with the film knowing that those 3, particularly Janet and Diana, those 2 very pivotal parts of his story, were not going to be able to be included? Because, to be perfectly honest, if you would have asked me to pick which brother is which in this biopic, the only one I've been able to tell you who's who is Tito, and that's only because he was wearing a damn hat that said Tito.
Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so Matthew, to answer your question, I will say yes, even though I agree with you. I wish that Janet and Diana did have a role in this to play, because I mean, those were 2 of the most important female relationships that he had, and that is something that I wish the film would have expanded on more, because they kind of made him seem so infantile, of like, I can't relate to anybody, and it's like, okay, like, yes, there's some of that, but you guys are swinging it so far to the extreme that you're making it seem like, I mean, he's like his IQ is like room temperature, and I'm like, that's not who he was. Like they're making him seem like he's just so dependent on all these people, of like, oh, I can't make any friends. And, yes, there is some truth to that, but it's such an overcorrection that again, and this is the influence of filming, which I know we're about to go into the Netflix doc here in a moment, is that film is such a powerful medium. So you have to get those details right, because people will take that as gospel and not do the research that you and I have done for decades. So that is the danger of that. But to answer your question directly, yes, I do think they should have gone forward with it, because there is so much out there about Michael that people don't understand, which is why it goes back to what I said about my review, is that I think it got more right than it did wrong, because now the public perception has changed to an extent.
Oh,
yeah, I was muting myself because
it's okay. It's okay.
That's fine. The public perception has changed, and even then, I have my grievances with that too, because now it's become popular to be a Michael Jackson fan again, whereas you and I, like, we've all, like, we thugged our way through it when it wasn't popular to be a Michael Jackson supporter. So yeah, I do think it has done some good. And I do think they can still tell the story. I would love to see Janet and Diana be a part of that, because even Kat Graham, who played Diana Ross, was like one of the last to know that all of her scenes were going to be cut.
Yeah.
So I hope that there's some way to circle back to that. But go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I was being great to have in the movie, but in the end, did we really miss them? I forgot.
Let me put it this way. Do you think that the story they told should have been done without Janet and Diana?
No,
I feel like
it should
they
be told.
They could have done a different angle of this movie, and I wouldn't have missed them. But I'll put it that way.
I would have preferred that everybody be in here. I prefer they got the Wiz right, and Quincy and Michael met during they met before that, but during the Wiz, not just randomly. Hey, let's do an album together. Oh, it's the Wiz. Yeah. Obviously, they couldn't talk about it because you have to loop in Diana and the Wiz, get the Wiz, rights and all that stuff. We get all that. Yeah. But for what they were working with, I thought they did enough to make it work. And in the end, Matt, you really, I don't know how you felt about this, but I didn't think about Janet or Diana. I was focused on Michael.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. It wasn't something that I was thinking about while I was watching it.
Right. Exactly.
It was something I was thinking about after I had watched
after the fact, right.
And I'm like, because I'm thinking about like the things that I wish I would have saw. Like if Randy and Janet would have had their life rights, they could have reenacted the whole thing of the three of them working on the Off the Wall demos with Michael.
Yeah. Do we know
Michael
why?
Turn down my earphones, man. We'll turn them off.
Yeah.
Okay,
all
so
that stuff that him and Janet and Randy did.
Do we know why Reby, Janet, and Randy are not in there? Do you know?
Randy's MAGA, so I couldn't give a shit about why.
No, I understand that, but why did Randy say no? Randy said no, right?
I think they all. I mean, everyone is asked, and they declined.
What about Reby though? I'm surprised Reby didn't.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why. I know no one gave. I think that's also a thing that bothers me, is that no one gave a clear explanation of why they decided that they were not going to allow their life rights to be included in the film. I wish I think that would have helped us get a little bit of closure, right? Because then I was just speculating about because now people are. It's like Chris, like you were saying about people like speculating about. Well, Michael Jackson, has autism, or Michael Jackson is neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, Diana Ross is excluding herself from the movie because Michael and him, because she abused Michael when he was young, or because they had an affair when he was a young guy, and she curbed him because she said yes to a proposal and then took it back and married somebody else. Like, it's just, and Dirty Diana was really about her, and Quincy Jones, made him change lyrics. It's all this speculation that happens that's unfounded, that happens when things like that happen. We say, she's not going to be a part of it at the last minute, and with no real explanation. And that part of it is really what it is. But just to end this segment of it, because we've been talking about, we've been talking for a long time already. But here's what I will say about the last thing I'll say about the Michael movie. Chris, you're absolutely right. It got more right than it did wrong. It's just that I just wish they wouldn't have taken for granted the fact that Michael's story was so well known. If anything, I wish they could have comprised it to. I wish they would have did more of what they did for Ali.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because Ali was a 10-year moment in Muhammad Ali's life
Mm-hmm.
and concentrated on that, they could have told the story a little bit more nuanced. Like there's so much to unpack. Like the whole story about how the Thriller album was even created could have been a
Yes.
movie in and of itself. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that they had 8 months to do it, then E.T.'s storybook comes along and cuts that in half. The fact that they're coming off of the back of Off the Wall. The fact that Michael wants to do an album that is the biggest selling album of all time. The fact that Quincy and him want to make an album that has 9 singles. The fact that Quincy wants to revitalize the record industry, which was having a slump at the time. The fact that Michael was having these paranoid thoughts that made him write "Want to Be Starting Something" and Beat It and Billie Jean. The fact that they scrambled and had to remix the record all over again and all that stuff. And there's just so much to unpack just on that period in and of itself that could have been a movie by itself. I just wish that could have been something. But I think overall, the thing I'm most happy about is the fact that it's a success. Like whether I love the film or just kind of like it, I love the fact that the film is a big success, and I can't wait for it to pass Oppenheimer as the biggest biopic of all time, and eventually cross to the $1 billion mark. Which
Well, right now,
really didn't think was going to happen, but
we're 40 million away from it right now. I know theaters are shutting it down after this week. Japan is still going strong, apparently, and only 10% down from the first week, which is a massive success, which means it's still holding firm. Japan should be the one to put over the top. Now, the only thing that may hurt it, it said the yen has dropped significantly in the last couple of years, so the numbers might be a little different, but they still think it'll pass $1 billion because of the fact that between the last million here worldwide coming in domestically and worldwide this week, and then the other markets that still playing the movie outside this country. It should get over the hump by next week or next 2 weeks. So
I still don't understand why they're taking it out of theaters so quick.
I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why they did that for it. It was still being sold. I don't understand why. Now they said it is actually common practice. This happens, but still, like
Bohemian Rhapsody was in theaters for 6 months.
But don't forget though.
It's been 2 months. It's been 2 months.
Remember, this is
not
pre-COVID,
even.
though. But this is pre-COVID though. Bohemian Rhapsody is pre-COVID. Things have changed since COVID.
Yeah,
I think the industry now changed dramatically now. So movies don't get 2 month runs anymore. So what Michael's doing is inconceivable.
But the fact that the big reason why this movie has gotten so well is because of the fact that people are going to see it so many times and repeat and going back.
They love it.
One of the biggest reasons why this movie is going to reach $1 billion, because there are individuals who go back and watch it 5, 6, 7 times, which should show you why they should leave it in the theaters, especially with the anniversary of his death coming this Friday.
Correct.
And all that other stuff. That they should I get it. You make a very good point about the pre-COVID thing. Because people are not going to movie theaters like that anymore.
I don't.
I like I said, I went to see it one time. I think I've seen one movie. I think I've seen 2 movies more than once in my entire life. Black Panther Part 1 and Ghost Dad. Don't judge me. So, I was.
Why would I judge you for?
So
you like what you like, bro.
So I was 8, and but anyway, that's the reason why they should keep it in the theaters. And plus, I don't know. I feel like Michael Jackson's estate is still run by his ops, so they're sort of self-sabotaging.
There's something to say about that.
They're self-sabotaging to stop it from going to $1 billion by taking it out of theaters prematurely. They're sabotaging it by making it available digitally prematurely, in my opinion. But because I would have waited till it got to $1 billion before I released it digitally personally. But that's that's not my call. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. What's your thing?
Yeah, Matthew. I love that you made that comment about the digital version being released prematurely, because I think that would be a good segue for what we're about to go into. But the last comment that I'll make about the biopic is that because there was a legal clause that prevented them from showing the original footage that they had shown, because they were prepared, Antoine Fuqua and his team, they were prepared to go all the way up to 1993, and I understand they had to cut that footage out. But what I hope for in the sequel is that they can talk about the 2005 trial in a very subtle way, that they can address what happened in 1993. Is they can say something along the lines of, well, this isn't the first time that this has happened. That could be the very subtle way of saying, hey, this is the first time that Michael's been to court for this reason. And that's their workaround for it. Yes, you can address it subtly, but then unpack what happened in 2005 in the sequel if they decide to take it that far.
I'd say do it anyway. I say put the 93 in there anyway. Evan Chandler is dead. Good riddance. I shouldn't say that. edit that part out.
Good riddance. You shouldn't say that. Goodbye. Bye.
Evan Chandler is dead. It's who's suing the estate? You know what I'm saying? Jordy Chandler has been silent this whole time, hasn't said a single word. So it's like, who's suing the estate over keeping that in? He should just do it and just pay the money for the lawsuit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that I would have been. I don't know, but like I said, that's why I'm not in the industry.
I think the big challenge for part 2 is, how do you address a serious situation and gloss it up still to where it's palatable to all audiences to watch? Because up until this Michael movie number 1, it's for any ages. Anybody can watch this movie. My 9-year-old loved the movie. My 9-year-old loved it. So it's palatable to him. There's nothing controversial in that movie whatsoever. But now you're bringing up alleged sexual abuse allegations against children, in here. How do you do that and gloss up to where it's still above water, to where it's palatable for everybody to watch comfortably? That's a challenge here for part 2.
Very good point, EJ.
And no one's bringing that up.
And
that alone, very good point.
Honestly, that alone may hurt the sales for part 2. Not just because
there's no way. I would never expect part 2 to go to $1 billion, knowing that those things are going to be addressed. And also, and Chris, you talked about Flex.
Yeah.
Flex Alexander?
VH1 biopic on Michael.
Yeah, Man in the Mirror.
Why were they able to?
Wait, say it again.
You know what I'm saying? Because they mentioned the 93 allegations. They didn't mention Jordy and Evan, but they mentioned the allegations in that movie. So why can't they mention it in this big budget movie? They weren't worried about the lawsuit back then.
Right. And then
that's a good point.
Think of the countless documentaries that have been done up until this point. So how is it that a documentary can dive into that like a Square One, but then
it might be a name thing?
I think it's a specific clause about them dramatizing it, and you know what I'm saying. Right. It's one thing to do a documentary to talk about it. It's another thing to dramatize it in a way that you have artistic liberties to bend certain truths for the sake of telling a narrative. I think that's really what it was about. But my issue was the fact that they made a dramatized movie with the Man in the Mirror film with Flex Alexander playing Michael, and they're able to mention the 93 allegations in that film. I don't understand why they couldn't do it with this film. That's maybe it predate. I honestly would like to get answers about that. But like I said, let's move on to the next one because like I said, we're over an hour in.
That's fine. All right. Did any of you guys watch The Verdict on Michael Jackson on Netflix?
Yes. I watched it and I wrote a piece on it.
You did? Wait, you did?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I can share it with you after if you want to put it.
Thank you, please. I want to see your perspective on that.
But yeah, I'm happy to dive right into that if we're ready to pivot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please,
George.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the net of it is that I didn't walk out of there surprised with anything that they said. They intentionally leaned more towards the prosecution, and yes, they did present a few voices to make it appear as though they were being balanced on the defense side of things. But I think there's a reason why Tom Mesereau and other folks chose not to participate, is that they knew the slant that they were going to come at it with. So that brings me back to what you said a moment ago, Matthew, about prematurely releasing the biopic in the middle of its theatrical run. I believe they knew that Netflix had this documentary in the cut. And they're like, okay, for us to get ahead of it, let's do the, and maybe I'm giving the estate too much credit here, but maybe they thought to themselves, okay, the best thing that we can do is have the biopic out at the same time as the documentary is, and let the crowd decide what the real Michael Jackson is, and they're going to bank on all the goodwill that they've created online, because a lot of it has been positive. Of course, there's been some negative, but it's been overwhelmingly positive, and we could show that through the box office success. So I think they're banking on the fact that because Michael's been a huge talking point, they're like, okay, I'm not willing to believe that the verdict is true. I'm going to lean more towards like, okay, what the biopic showed is more accurate to who the real Michael Jackson is. That's my theory.
Okay.
And giving the estate too much credit here. But I wrote about this. At first, it started out as just a tweet. And EJ, I know that you saw it when I first put it up.
Right.
Because a lot of folks were asking me, hey, what do you think about the Netflix documentary? And I said that I believe that Michael Jackson was a flawed person, but not a child predator. And here's the part that really surprised me, is that a lot of fans came at me on Twitter because they had an issue with me saying this particular part of my tweet. I said, yes, he's childish, stubborn, had a history of being kind of being passive aggressive. Yes, he went overboard on plastic surgery. He got addicted to painkillers and developed some bad spending habits. But the Netflix documentary blatantly asked you in the trailer, guilty or innocent, you decide. And I said that the danger of selective framing is that the audience stops asking, is this proven? And they start asking, how does this make me feel? So again, the vast majority of what I said is in defense of Michael, but fans got so upset that I was willing to point out a few of Michael Jackson's flaws. They're like, oh, well, I was going to retweet this until I saw this BS part in your tweet. I'm like, what's wrong with what I said? They're like, well, it's just mean. I'm like, okay, just because you're offended, I'm still waiting for you to make your point. Just because you're offended doesn't mean that you're right.
It's true.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
And I did see that post, Chris, and I totally agree with you. Like Michael Jackson definitely was a complex man who did things that some people would consider peculiar or in bad taste. But there's a difference between someone that's doing peculiar things and someone who's doing criminal things.
Correct.
And Michael Jackson did not do anything it was never proven to do anything that was criminal. And that's the point that I wanted to make to you, Chris, because I didn't watch the documentary for this particular reason, because of the way that it was advertised. Is guilty or innocent, you decide. And I'm like, why are they trying to frame ambiguity of a case that was obvious, that was closed decisively as him being not guilty on 14 counts?
I'll answer your question.
You know what I'm saying? The fact that they did that way was one of the biggest reasons why I decided not to watch it, was because I knew that it was going to have a negative slant to try to cause reasonable doubt and ambiguity in Michael's innocence, despite the fact that Michael was proven to be innocent. And that is some of the most irresponsible journalism and filmmaking that I've seen in a long time. And one thing I will say before you come back, Chris, is that I don't agree that the biopic was put out in order to get ahead of the verdict, the documentary. I think that the verdict documentary was made and with the knowledge that this biopic was coming out, and they were strategically waiting for the right moment after the biopic came out to put it there to garner their viewership. Number one. Number two, to be a part of the massive unified hazing of the critics of the movie. Because I told you, EJ, last year, or even before that, expect for more and more negative articles and media about Michael Jackson to increase steadily the closer and closer and closer we get to the biopic.
Right down to what we said earlier in the show about the reviews and stuff too. Also,
before the reviews, before the film was even finished, before we even had 2 trailers. Once the first trailer happened, you start seeing all these stories about, oh, Michael Jackson said this about his abuse, and he called it playtime. He didn't call it abuse, and all this other nonsense. And things that were proven untrue or proven speculation, but put on as fact. The whole thing with the Casio family, and their attempt at extorting Michael and all this other stuff that came through. So many things came out the closer and closer we got to the biopic because people were trying to torpedo it before it happened to stop it from being successful because they knew that it painted Michael in a positive way and they didn't want that. I think that this Netflix documentary, if was waiting, was finished and they were waiting for the right time after the film came out to be put out. If they would have pushed the movie back to 2027, we wouldn't see that documentary until 2027 after the movie came out.
And I agree with you 1,000%. I agree with you that there are people that continue to perpetuate this narrative that, you know, he got away with it, gets more money and attention than he was acquitted. So I agree with you 1,000% on that they had this Netflix documentary waiting. As soon as they knew that the biopic was greenlit, they were waiting for the right time. And that's why I was careful to say, this is my theory. It's not proven. It's just a hunch of mine of like, okay, maybe I'm giving the estate too much credit here, but I want to believe that there is some shrewd business acumen put into like, okay, yes, most folks would wait until, you know, the movie's reached $1 billion or completed its theatrical run before we, you know, put it out digitally. But because it's been such a surprise success to some people, I want to believe that the estate was like, okay, we're gonna trust the audience that, okay, we know the Netflix documentary is going to be out. Let's time the digital release around the same time and say, okay, we're going to let the audience decide, you know, who the real Michael Jackson is, because we've seen the reception so far. Because that, you know, before we even knew about the Netflix documentary, I think it had already crossed over 500 million at that point. So they knew it was on its way, you know, as far as being a runaway success. Yeah. And then that's when we heard about the Netflix documentary. And I remember I texted a few people. I'm like, did y'all hear anything about this? They're like, no, like this is a complete curveball out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, because, you know, us being, you know, tied to, you know, because we're movie lovers and all the things, we're like, I didn't hear anything about it from you guys of like, hey, I hear there's a chance that the documentary is going to come out about the 2005 trial. I didn't hear that from you guys or any of the insiders that I'm friends with. So.
Strange enough, Chris, though, there was I thought originally when this came out that it was going to be the basically taking the one that came out in England either last year or early this year called The Trial. I thought they were just taking that and putting on Netflix.
Gotcha.
Because there was one that Channel 4, of course, Channel 4 is the people who produced Leaving Neverland,
right.
And Part 2 as well, did that. So I thought it was the same exact thing. They're just putting it on another platform. It was a whole brand new. This is a whole brand new project, apparently. So
yeah. No, I agree with you. So yeah, I mean, largely, you know, Matthew and EJ, I don't know if you watched it, but you're not missing anything, honestly. And this is why I keep coming back to the evidence, like, because I anticipated that a lot of people were going to come to me and say, Chris, what do you think about this? Because I've spent so much time looking at, you know, the court documents and, you know, and I have receipts after receipts of, you know, contradiction after contradiction. Each time that I responded to a friend of mine, like, hey, you know, like, Chris, like, I want to believe that he didn't do it, but I have my issues with this. I'm like, okay, cool. I addressed what they said, but then I would back it up with a receipt of like, hey, here's where the evidence goes against what the documentary said. And then I had another friend of mine who just flat out believes that Michael did it. I'm like, okay, what evidence do you have that I'm not familiar with?
Right.
And it's been crickets ever since then. So I'm being strategic in how I reach out to these people, because if I say, oh, well, you know, the documentary sucks, but I never watched it, then now my credibility is at stake of like, okay, it seems like you already have a conclusion in your mind, Chris, of Michael was innocent instead of you resting in the evidence. But if I continue to take that position of like, hey, I'm resting in the evidence, then now I continue to be a consistent source of truth no matter what.
You know what's fascinating this whole thing, though? We can sit here and we write our pieces. We can put these videos out, these documentaries, and at the end of the day, this, like, for example, this documentary, they can spin whatever the fuck they want to spin all day long. Mm-hmm. So you can spin all this bullshit, all this stuff, whether you believe it or not. That's up to you, and you're the individual. And yet they still came to a not guilty verdict 14 times, 10 and then 14, 4 misdemeanors. Okay, why don't you ask that question? Okay, for all the stuff they want to throw at you, you still come to a not guilty verdict in one of the most conservative counties in California, for the record.
Right.
Answer that question to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if he were a powerful child predator, why would he be persecuted instead of protected?
Thank you.
Especially him.
And here's the other thing.
Especially him.
Exactly. I'm like, why would you expose your operation? If he was truly into that stuff, why persecute him instead of protect him?
And
thank you. And here's the other thing I'll say about that.
Sure. Go ahead.
Here's the other thing I'll say about that. And this is another thing that I say to people all the time. And I say this to some certain colleagues that I wrote with that shall remain nameless for now. When Harvey Weinstein, when somebody came forward about Harvey Weinstein, what happened? More people came forward.
Right.
When somebody came forward about Bill Cosby, what happened? More people came forward. When somebody came forward about R. Kelly, what happened? More people came forward. When one person came forward about Afrika Bambaataa, more people came forward. What happened when somebody came forward about Michael Jackson, particularly when Leaving Neverland came out? No, they're lying. When James and Wade came out and said he did this, Macaulay said he's lying. Brett Barnes said he's lying. Aaron Carter said they're lying.
Right. And to buffer your point, the people that are making these accusations are the same people who vehemently defended him for decades.
Decades.
What changed?
Back to people with
what changed?
Right, exactly. Like, how did you go from defending him for decades, now all of a sudden your whole story changes? So then, like in the case of Wade Robson, when I went back to my friend who thinks that Michael did it, I'm like, don't you find it odd that he not only defended Michael publicly, he was the key witness for 2005, and you don't even see his face in the documentary. That's number one. Number two,
that's a good point.
He was on stage with Janet to show honor to him, and then the moment he doesn't get the Cirque du Soleil show, all of a sudden his whole narrative changes.
Listen,
do you not find it funny?
Listen, it's a bitch when your rent goes into arrears. I'll tell you that.
I agree with you.
Being out of work, as long as I've been out of work in terms of having a full-time job, I realized that there's a lot of things that I didn't think I was willing to do for money that I'm willing to do for money now. So I listen, it's reprehensible and it's abhorrent and it's absolutely sickening and disgusting. But I get it. You need money. You're gonna say some stuff that's just gonna get you more money. The sad thing is that it isn't working. It's just because you contradicted yourself too much. You know, James talked about being molested in a building that didn't even exist. They lied about the fact that they didn't know each other, but there's video footage of them together on the Jam video. It's just like, come on, guys! Like they don't know that. People are.
I love the best about this too. Also, about Michael and the whole kids and stuff. That is that I got a good friend of mine, love him to death, a great dude, but he thinks Michael's guilty. And he goes to me every time he brings up this whole thing about Michael and being a pedophile, whatever. I'm like, he's like, and I tell him he has to X, Y, and Z, this and that. His first response is, "Was your kid sleeping in his bed or whatever?" I'm like, bro, as a father too, I won't let anybody sleep with the kids. So that's besides the point.
I got cousins I wouldn't let him sleep. My kids sleep.
And I told him, listen, bro, we're not having a morality conversation here. We're having whether or not this guy's a fucking criminal. Like, you can't seem to separate the two, can you? If you think the guy's weird for doing what he did, fine. I'm not disagreeing with you with the idea of that being weird. We're having a conversation about whether or not he did something bad or not. And the evidence matters. The evidence matters at the end of the day. Why is it that every time something comes up, one of these, accuser comes up, it's so easy to find out the fucking lying? Why is it so easy?
Because they don't want to believe the evidence. They want to believe it. They want to believe he's guilty.
Guys, okay, accusers, if you want to be good at this thing and lying about it, make me work harder. Why is it that a dumb fuck like me could read these stories and say, you're lying, and you're lying?
And Matthew, I agree with you. It's like they already have a conclusion in their mind, which is why the critics about the biopic, they already had an idea of what they wanted to see, and when they didn't get it, they're like, okay, we're going to bomb this thing. So two quick comments, kind of going back to what you said before about money, Matthew. Here's where I will get biblical. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. That is literally 1 Timothy 6:10. And we are seeing that with every person that is in proximity of Michael. Once they've had a taste or a glimpse of that lifestyle or that access to life, the moment that they no longer have it, they're willing to change their entire story just so they can get another piece of him. So it is unfortunate that Michael, had to be the victim of that, or he had to be the target of that. That's just his level of fame that brought that. That's the first comment. The second,
right.
Go ahead.
No,
the second comment I was going to make, and this is directly from my piece on Medium where I'm talking about the Netflix documentary, and it's a brief article, but I said, I understand why people are uncomfortable with the sleepover issue. I am too, but context matters there as well. Michael's bedroom at Neverland is not a normal bedroom that in the way most people imagine one to be. Macaulay Culkin and others have described it as an enormous upstairs, downstairs suite closer to a duplex in a typical room. And then here's the part that I included as well in the piece, and nobody's challenged me on it. Michael also claimed in the Martin Bashir special that he'd stay in a sleeping bag on the floor while his guests used the bed. Some people will find that explanation persuasive, others won't, but leaving out that context in the documentary changes how the situation sounds.
This is a very pivotal aspect, because it's like I said, I've had former colleagues who still say, somebody said this on a podcast, like somebody asked me, you think that Michael Jackson was guilty? He's like, I think anybody that sleeps in a bed with kids is probably fucking him. And so I'm like, well, he doesn't understand or did the research to understand the context of, no, Michael Jackson never slept in a bed with any children. By his own admission, he said, I've never slept in the bed. Like, yes, he has said that. Why would that be such a big deal even if I did? Which I understand why people would say that's problematic.
Sure.
Cool.
But the fact is that he said, no, I've never actually slept in the bed with any children. He's said that. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, why is it? And it's just infuriating that people want to ignore that context just because they want to be right about how they feel.
Because gotcha. Because what Chris is saying is about being right.
Yeah, it's about being right more than it is about, being correct. And people hate being corrected. They hate being, having to backtrack and said, you know what, I was wrong. That's why I said all these, I say it again, all these black writers who came out and said Michael Jackson was a pedophile once Leaving Neverland went out without any research or context and continue. I said, I don't want to hear shit from them when this movie comes out.
You did say that on the show.
I better not hear one word about the movie, about whether you saw it or not. I saw one writer, the same writer that said, oh, I think Michael was fucking the kids because he slept in the bed with the kids. He went and saw the movie and talked about it on the same platform. Why in the world would you see a movie about a guy that you think was doing?
They're telling on themselves,
thing?
bro.
Like, exactly. What sense does that make? I would never do such a thing. I don't like 50 Cent. You know what I'm saying? He's not like accused of being such a like a criminal or whatever. He's just an asshole. But you know what I'm saying? But I would never accept money for talking about, Get Rich or Die Trying or the massacre or whatever. Like, I'll write about it if it pertains to a certain context. But I'm not going to go out of my way to talk about his music specifically, because I know that there's a part of me that can't put my bias aside because of how I feel about him personally. And anybody that's going to go out of their way to talk about a person's artistry, knowing that they think that they did something that heinous, is a sellout and a hypocrite.
Yep.
And that's pure and simple.
Yep.
And there's nothing that'll ever make me change that unless a person has a formal apology or correction on their part on a similar platform. Point blank, period.
That's fair.
You nailed it, brother. You nailed it. Like I said, the Netflix documentary, they can go ahead and try to, try all these like ways to convince you and all this stuff that this could have happened and this book was found here, and yet the verdict came what it was. Explain that part, bro. Explain that part. You're complicating this conversation, bro.
Yeah.
Stop complicating it. Let's get down to brass tacks here, okay?
And the whole thing about the justice system.
And Matt, real quick, Matt, and also if you believe he's guilty and he's exactly what he's want to do, why the fuck are you lying then to get to the premise? Why are you lying? Why are you omitting things out of the thing?
Right.
Stop omitting shit.
And the whole thing about it is, and I'll tell you another thing about, like I talked about, the difference between this case and other cases, is the whole idea that, Michael got off because he's rich. What about Harvey Weinstein? Harvey Weinstein had more money than Mike, and he's gone. Bill Cosby had more money than Mike, and boom. What? So don't give me that. Oh,
it's lazy. It's lazy.
Like,
I want to be right. I'm a narcissist. I want to be right.
Right. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, the justice system got it wrong because they let this guy go free, but the same justice system got it right when those guys went to, like, come on, man. Like, just stop.
I love that y'all brought that up, which is why, to bring it full circle, that's why I was so surprised that fans gave me grief about me pointing out his shortcomings. Because I'm like, guys, if you look at what I said, number one, nothing that I said was incorrect. But also the very last thing I mentioned is that he developed bad spending habits. What I'm doing, because again, that's factually true, number one. Number two, it debunks the theory like, oh, Michael paid the justice system off, because he was severely in debt. And it even shows in the Living with Michael Jackson special that Martin Bashir saying that, yeah, he has this pattern of just buying all these, anything he saw, he's just like, yep, I want that, I want that, I want this, I want that. And that is the whole reason why John Branco, when he took over the estate, and I hate that he did this, but he ended up selling Michael's catalog back to Sony to clear up that debt that Michael had in his final years. Now, of course, again, I'll have my grievances with that.
And he didn't even have to do that.
I agree. He didn't have to do that. But if people take the time to think like, okay, if you honestly believe that Michael paid the justice system off, then explain how the FBI did a 13-year investigation on the guy and found nothing.
I don't know.
FBI files are right there, and I put them in I put them in my post. I put them in my article. I'm like, hey, here's where I landed, and based on the evidence. If you want to challenge me on anything, please, like I invite that. And to this day, like, it's nothing, like, anybody that has an issue with Michael and thinks that he did it is speaking purely out of emotion. They have not brought a credible source of information to say,
because they're telling on themselves, bro.
I agree. So
one thing I will say,
one
thing I will say, Chris, is maybe it was just the context of the timing. It's just like I'm playing devil's advocate here,
sure,
because I'm just like, okay, we're having this celebratory moment about Michael, so to bring up his shortcomings in a time where we're just actively celebrating him in this unified way that we haven't seen since he was alive. Maybe it just seemed like it was bad timing to bring that up, even though you were making a bigger point that ultimately needed those statements to be made, because it is true. And I've said it to other people in real life where I'm like, look, yeah, Michael Jackson was a peculiar guy that did things that were probably inappropriate in terms of, constantly being around children or constantly spending the money the way that he did. But there's a difference between being inappropriate and being a criminal. And he was never proven to be a criminal. And that is the point. And that's the whole thing. And it to go back to leaving Neverland, the thing I hate the most about that documentary is the fact that Wade in particularly tried to frame Michael's entire career and the way that he connected to children all over the world as a grooming device for his own personal deviance, which is complete, not only irresponsible, but it completely tries to erase the importance of his artistry, of his otherworldly connection to how music makes people feel, and not to mention the fact that this is about a segue to the next segment.
Yeah,
we're about to hit 17 years since Michael Jackson died, and I got people who are 4 and 5 years old wearing Thriller jackets, wearing Smooth Criminal white suits. I was just at a elementary school where they did like a 70s soul review, and from from pre-K to fifth grade, and most of the songs were Michael Jackson songs, and they were dressed like Michael Jackson. They had the sequins glove and the floods on the socks and the hats. I'm like, how is this man who's been gone for all this time have kids who were born after he's been gone still treat him like he's a contemporary artist?
Yeah.
They still treat Michael Jackson like he's somebody that is current, like he's Bruno Mars or The Weeknd or something. If you go down the TikTok rabbit hole, I've seen kids cry when their parents have to break the news that Michael Jackson is dead, because they think that, oh, the Thriller video, the Remember the Time video, the She's Out of My Life video, Rock With You, those are videos he must have put out recently. So I'm going to go see him in concert. Like, no, you can't see him in concert. He came out years ago.
You know, I used to think those videos like fakeish and stuff. No, they're not fake. They're real.
I agree.
They're completely real. And it's so crazy. Like one of my friends, her daughter is 5, and she saw the Michael movie and is smitten. And she said something about how she was sad that Michael was gone. And she was just sitting there thinking, you know, Mom, I was just thinking about how much I love Michael Jackson. I was also thinking about how much he probably would have loved me. And it was just such a beautiful notion. Like, you know, it's so great. I'm working on a piece on Michael about how he used Christ consciousness to elevate himself to the heights that he did. And one of the aspects of it is the fact that when he said in the Oprah interview, he said, I imitate Jesus when I said to be like children. And not to get too much into the weeds, if I may.
Go ahead.
I'll just tell you the.
By the way, Chris, I found your article. So I have it up here.
Yeah. So Michael's quote was, he said, "I'd like to imitate Jesus. I'm not saying I am Jesus, but I like to imitate Jesus, who said to be like children." He was quoting the Matthew chapter 18, verse 3. And Jesus said, "I verily say unto you, unless ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven." Right. So the whole idea of that, he used his artistry and he uses philanthropy and humanitarianism in that way to make it so that children would be able to see him as somebody that exists in real time, and to have that connection with him, even though he's not here to foster that connection as a person living on this earth. The fact that Wade tried to use that against Mike in Leaving Neverland is probably the thing that I find the most egregious.
Listen, you said it yourself. When you're broke on your ass, you do desperate things, man. As I told you, the Michael Jackson business, good or bad, is still business, bro.
Listen, I'm this close to making an OnlyFans with my naked feet. I'm telling you, being broke ain't it, guys. It ain't it. You don't know what depths you'll sink to. So
believe me,
I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it.
Yeah. Having said that, like I said, we're dropping this episode on the day of Michael Jackson's passing, 17 years later. We might have discussed it in the past before, but since this is a new project doing here on the Unrestricted Podcast, and Planet MJ, of course. Any memories of that day, June 25th, 2009? Where you at?
Yeah,
we can reflect on that.
I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I literally remember it like it was yesterday. So I worked at this company, Brick Arts Media. I worked there for 15 years. This is 2009, so in June 2025. So I was there for literally a year because I got hired on June 23rd. My first day was June 23rd, 2008. So it was June 25th, 2009. So I was there for literally a year. And I went to work, and somebody called me, Tyrone, from the trafficking department, because I was working at a public access TV station. And he called me on my phone and he said, "Matt, there's a news that Michael was in the hospital. He has a heart issue and he's trouble breathing." I'm like, "Oh, thanks for letting me know. I'll go look it up." And I hung up the phone with him. I was like, "Damn, Michael's got these This Is It concerts coming in London soon. He's about to go to do dress rehearsals. I hope he's okay." Not even 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It's Tyrone again. He says, I said, hello. He goes, bad news, Matt. I was like, nope. Click. And I hung up on him because I knew exactly what he was going to tell me. And then the next thing you know, I'm hearing people, what? Like in the background in the hallway. What are you? No, that can't be true. Oh my God. I was like, I got to get out of here. I left an hour early from work. I just got up. I didn't tell anybody I was leaving. I just got up and I walked out of work. And I started walking home. And I just walked home. My phone was blowing up. I was getting calls and text messages in my small little Nokia phone. I refused to look at it. And I was walking. I remember that day I was supposed to go to Celebrate Brooklyn concert at Prospect Park because Femi Kuti was performing. And I didn't go. I just walked. I walked from downtown Brooklyn all the way up Flatbush Avenue to my apartment on Bedford and Empire, which is like a 30-minute walk. And I got in my house, and there's a commercial, there's a car insurance commercial that uses "I'll Be There" as the soundtrack to the commercial. I turned the TV on, and you know how sometimes you'll hear the audio of a TV before you see the actual picture?
Yeah.
That happened. And so all I hear was an acapella of "You and I must make a pact." And I'm like, oh my God, it's true, isn't it? It was that commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was State Farm that repurposed "I'll Be There" around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I changed it to CNN, and sure enough, it said that he was gone, that he died. Because I remember looking at my computer, and TMZ said that Michael Jackson dead at 50 before I got up and left work. Because I'm like, no, if TMZ, I'm not going to believe it until I hear CNN say it. And I don't give a shit what TMZ gets right. I will never give them that. Like, even as a journalist, I will unless I absolutely am instructed by my editor, I will not use TMZ as my primary source when I'm writing an obituary about somebody. I will never do it. So and that's when I realized it was true, and it was all over. My son's mother, who I was living with at the time, this is before my son was born, obviously. She came rushing home from work because she thought I was in the fetal position, crying. Mm-hmm. I was not. I was in shock. Then she started reading the news, and she started tearing up, just reading the news. I was in shock. I didn't listen to anything until right before I went to sleep. I put on the Jackson self-titled album on CD. I skipped right to Show You the Way to Go. And I was fine. And I'm like, okay. And then I woke up thinking, maybe if I go to sleep tomorrow, maybe it was just a bad dream. And I remember Questlove tweeting, this feels like I had a bad nightmare. And then I woke up and then everybody had the same nightmare. And so it took a while to really accept that. It took a day or two to accept that Michael was really gone. Even after the funeral, I'm just watching and I'm just on TV. I'm like, wow, this is surreal. It wasn't until months later when I'm going to work on the train and it's cold outside. Remember, his death is in June. It's the summertime. So I'm going to work one time in the fall when it's really, really cold in Brooklyn, New York. And I listened to Ben's album on CD. I listened to Everybody Somebody's Fool. And that's when it hit me.
You went old school, bro.
I was just because certain notes and progressions of notes can foster in tears for me. And it was in that moment where he goes, when it modulates, it goes, oh, it's beautiful to watch love begin, but oh, so sad. And I was inconsolable. I was crying on the Q train hard.
The Q train. Wow.
I was crying on the Q train hard at DeKalb Avenue in downtown Brooklyn. It just crushed me. I'm like, he's really gone. And I would periodically have these moments like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I'm watching Moonwalker at my computer at my desk at Brick, and it gets to that point after he shoots Mr. Big, and the plane is flying over, and then they go, "Where's he going?" And Katie says, "He's leaving." I've seen Moonwalker a million times, and in that moment, when she said he's leaving, I just felt the tears, and then when she says, "Thank you, Michael," and then he flies away, I just cried so hard because I'm like, in the movie he comes back, but he's not coming back in real life.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is real life. Moonwalker was like real life. He came, he danced, he saved the day, and then he went home, and that was that, and that's what happened in real life. And so that day is always, and then I have other personal family things that happened to me the exact same day that I can't really talk about, but it was a double whammy of emotion that I had. And it was very, very sad. But at the same time, people were playing Michael's music again. People were singing it on the streets. Like Kendrick said, united in grief. We were united in our grief.
Yeah.
And quick comment before I share my June 25th backstory. I love that you mentioned that Moonwalker scene, because just now, as you were describing it, whenever Michael does come back and and he sees the kids and he says, "I had to come back, Sean." I feel like we're experiencing that with the biopic success.
That's a great point.
His spirit is still with us, even though he's physically not here, and that's his way of saying, like, I had to come back.
That's a great point.
That's how I felt with This Is It.
Fantastic.
That's how I felt with this. That's how I felt with This Is It. I felt like when This Is It came out, I felt like we had Michael back. I felt like Michael had like a furlough where he came back for 2 hours. It was like, I really did. I did. I really felt like, it was like God saying, "Okay, fine. I'll let him come back just this one time."
I would say
he's got to come back again.
I would say, when post 2005 trial, when Mike was in seclusion and doing his own thing, we've had really two massive Michael revivals. Obviously, his death, unfortunately, and then now the movie.
Yeah, it feels like Michael Mania all over again.
Oh God, and I can argue this is big, not bigger.
All over.
Yeah.
That's that's why I call Michael Jackson the Black Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's right. You know what?
Because in the first Star Wars movie, when Vader and Obi-Wan fought, and he says, "You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine."
Yeah,
that's what happened with Michael Jackson. He is more powerful now than ever, than you can ever imagine, and that's because of what he left behind for us, and that's just, it's so powerful and healing to know. And that's why, what I'm saying, like, I felt like when I saw This Is It, like, okay, you got Michael back. I'll never forget the Do You Know Where Your Children Are? Before that got released on Escape, a 2010 version of it leaked on YouTube with Steve Lukather on guitar.
It's much heavier and raw.
Yeah,
I had that version.
Yeah, so I remember I heard it. I was my son was about to be born at that time, and I remember listening to it. I had gotten a second job preparing for his birth, and I was walking home from that second job, listening to it. And at the end of it, when he goes, "What's your baby? What's your baby?" He goes, "He he 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 he." He does that he thing.
Yeah.
I was like,
right.
He's alive! Like I just screamed out, "He's alive! He's alive! He's back! He's
awesome.
alive!" Because I just had this moment, like, I'm hearing a Michael Jackson song I'd never heard before, and I'm hearing him just belt out and sing it and do all the things that we know from to be, and I just felt like, oh my God, like this, like I just went back to hearing Bad for the first time, hearing Jam for the first time, hearing Scream for the first time, and this time around and all this other stuff, hearing them when I heard Butterflies for the first time on the radio, the day before Invincible dropped, I had that feeling, and so that's why I just screamed out, "He's alive!" I just like, he's back, he's back.
And by the way, that version is better than the one they done.
Wave! I don't like to no, I don't. Timbaland did good on a lot of the songs on there.
But again, this doesn't have Michael's soul in it. You can tell. This is why I really listen to the Michael stuff, the post-human stuff.
Look, it was hit or miss, and I would love. We need to do another episode that dissects.
We will.
Chicago specifically, because Chicago has more streams than Remember the Time.
It's weird.
With no music video, with no media push. Like, Remember the Time on Spotify?
I don't get it. I don't get it.
477 million streams. Chicago has 716 million streams just off the strength.
And by the way,
I don't understand it. It's crazy how people have latched onto that song.
Yeah, and I'll mention my June 25th backstory. I'll keep it brief because I know we've been on here for a little bit.
I know. I'm sorry. I know I've been talking.
No, you're good.
Everybody's ear off. I don't want you to hold yourself back, Chris.
No, okay. So yeah, I was 19 in college, just started a new job delivering Domino's pizza, and first day on the job, I felt my phone vibrating constantly in my pocket, and I'm like, I ain't trying to get fired on my first day. I'm just not. I literally can't afford to do it. And as soon as I got out, I pulled out my phone, and I saw I had the most missed calls from my mom. And we all know this. Like, if you see the most missed calls from your mom, you need to stop what you're doing and give them a call. And my sister answered, and she said, "Did you hear Michael Jackson died?" And I'm like, "Alyssa, don't play with me." And I thought she was playing with me because I'm the reason she does not like Michael Jackson to this day, because there was a good 4 or 5 year stretch where that's all she heard me listen to. And just through osmosis, like, she could instantly identify a song within the first couple of seconds. She's like, turned it off, because that's how hardcore I was as a kid. But then she was like, no, like, I'm not kidding. It's all over the news. So I remember rushing home, and the first song that I played in the car was Earth's song. And that's like when it hit me, and I cried in the car on the way home, because like that's when I was like, okay, like, this is for real. So that's my story in a nutshell. But what about you, EJ?
Yeah. So I was at work, and I heard the news that he was in the hospital. And at my job, I'm still there, 23 years now. We have many TVs. So we have literally at least 20 something TVs. So the news was on, and it was picking up steam. And of course, they find out he was first of all, he's in the hospital. He's in the hospital, of course. And then you find out he passed away. And listen, my phone blew the fuck up, bro. Because people know I'm a huge fan, obviously, but people also who are fans as well. Some people you may know personally that that call me just crying their eyes out. And it's weird for me because I've said it so many times over, and I don't want people to get offended by this, but there was a sense of relief when he passed away.
Yeah.
Not because I was happy he died, obviously. I was sad for his kids mostly. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew, because I was hearing reports from friends of mine who were fans that were at Staples for those last couple of days prior to his death. They were saying that he was not in good condition. He was very skinny looking, doesn't look very healthy, and that. He doesn't think that these concerts are going to go through and all that. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I remember telling my wife in the car 3 days before he'd passed away, it's funny. I don't, people are not going to appreciate this guy until he's gone. I don't know when that's going to happen, and you know what defined that day for me, honestly? It was 6 words. My friend Tara posted on her Facebook that day. She goes, "Farrah Fawcett, you have been upstaged."
Yeah.
Farrah Fawcett died that morning.
Yeah.
Of cancer.
If she died any other day, that day would have been dedicated to her.
Yeah, and I love Farrah Fawcett for record. So,
yeah.
But Michael Jackson passed away the same day you died. Literally the most famous man on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Died on your day.
And that was when Twitter crashed, and Twitter crashed hard.
I didn't get emotional. I lost sleep that night. I didn't get emotional. To me, I honestly didn't cry until the memorial service.
Mm.
And I was angry. And it wasn't because of him being gone. It was because Here's Brooke Shields talking. Where the fuck were you for the last like 10,
Yeah.
15 years? And
Good
all
point.
these fake ass celebrities trying to get their shots in and their TV time. I'm like, bro, where have
Yeah.
you been for the last 10, 15 years?
Mhm.
Like, nah, fam. We're not doing this shit. No.
Bunch of
So I was
vultures.
pissed off. And then
Yeah.
I got humanized when Paris went up there and said what she said, obviously. And that broke me.
And then
Because
she buried her face in Janet, you know, when she
yeah,
started
because
crying.
she was the only person in his life that was able to humanize Michael Jackson the way that nobody else did pretty much inside 50 years of his life. His daughter did that in
Yeah.
just a few words. And that
Um,
broke me.
And I love what you said a moment ago, EJ, about there being some relief, because after a few days, I also felt relief because even at 19 years old, I understood to an extent how much suffering he had been through in 50
Yeah.
years. And I remember thinking this back then, and I'll probably say it on a post later this week because I do have a short dance video tribute for him, and I have another new article coming out. Both of them come out June 25th. But my thoughts back then, and they've crystallized, and they still hold true now. 50 years doesn't seem like a long time, but when you live your life as accomplished and as fulfilling as he did, 50 years is an eternity.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Nailed it.
And
Freaking nailed it.
my son's mother, she told me when it happened, she's like, listen, I don't mean to offend you because I know how much you loved Mike, but did we really want to see Michael Jackson become an old man? You know, like
My brother said the same. My brother said the same thing
that
too.
version of Michael Jackson to turn into an 80, 90-year-old person that was going to be like this sort of decrepit, senile, you know, sort of I can't move, you know, sort of person. You know, like we're used to him being this bigger than life star that dances all over the place. But do we really want to see the biggest hero in the world not do what made him be heroic at some point? It's kind of like even like with Prince, you know, when Prince died, he was 57 when he passed away, or 56 when he passed away. So sorry, 57. And my whole thing about that was the fact, like, yeah, like what would an old Prince have been like? Like he was already in pain. You know, he barely could do what he was able to do live, but he was masking it. So I was just wondering, like, what would we have been able to accept seeing them not be who we knew them to be?
The only reason why I say yes, no, the answer is no, obviously, but it's different when you have children. He has 3 young children. Again, that humanized Michael Jackson. We just look at Michael Jackson as the superstar and this icon. This dude had 3 kids that loved the shit out of him. Literally are still to this day going through that trauma 7 years later. But we can't fathom that because we're not in that bubble.
That's a very good point.
Paris went to hell. I think she's still going through a lot with that. And then having to, you know, she's going through this whole situation now with, like, you know, she's coming to terms now with, you know, her relationship with Michael now as her father, and people feel like that she's supposed every Father's Day or every birthday, whatever. And she finally came to a place recently where she said, you know what? I don't have to do that. I had a relationship with this guy. This is my father. So how I feel about my father has no business. Has no entrance or no business with you as a fan. That's fine. Be a fan all you want. That's my dad. That's different.
And fans still gave her grief about not putting those posts.
It's ridiculous.
Like,
it's ridiculous.
The level of entitlement that you guys have on how someone should grieve a loved one, like, stay in your lane. Like that's like, if anybody told any of us how to grieve a loved one, be like, who are you to tell me how to grieve?
Exactly.
Like that's not okay. I love what you said there, EJ, about you know, that moment about Paris. You know, like that moment did humanize him. And I understand you still have your critics who believe that they're not his kids, even if, like, because that's none of our business on what that is, but those kids like they adored him, and he adored his kids in equal measure, if not
Did
more.
you before we leave here?
Mhm.
I can't stand Rabbi Shmuley, but did you see him on DJ Vlad's show last week?
I
And
did.
because Vlad brought up the whole thing with his kids, and I gotta give Shmuley credit. He
actually got it right.
He got it right. Shmuley told him, "What if I told you that wasn't your kids? Would I bother you? So why would you do the same to him?"
Thank you.
Amazing. It was amazing what he did there. Amazing.
I
So, yeah, the same. I'll send it to you guys. Matt, I don't know if you saw it yet. I'll send it to you today, later on.
Thank you.
I have it saved on Instagram. So, anyway, guys, great episode. First episode of this Plan MJ series here on the Earnestly podcast. Chris, go first. You want to plug anything?
Yeah. On Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, I'll have my my short MJ tribute up on June 25th, and I also have a new piece. It'll be about 4 or 5 minutes long. It's called Michael Jackson Steps Out of Formation, and the reason that I'm doing that piece is that I'm revisiting Motown 25, and I'm sure most people's minds are like, there's nothing new that you could talk about with Motown 25, but here's the teasers that Motown 25 staged his passage from a family act to a solo myth. And there's a lot that happens before and after that moment that a lot of people tend to overlook. So I hope that people enjoy that piece along with the short video, dance video I put together.
Okay. Awesome. I look forward to seeing that, man. Yeah. All right, Matt. What you got going on, Matt?
Currently, I'm freelancing at New York Amsterdam News.
Okay.
So that's been going great. So you can see my pieces there. I talk about local events happening around New York City and in Brooklyn, where I'm sitting now. And my Substack, the Moving Shrine, is live. I repurposed a lot of old articles from my previous Defined Media Substack. So right now you can go read As Jack as It Sounds, 30 years later, History Proves Michael Right, where I talk about about the History album being basically a concept album of what happens in a 24-hour news cycle when it comes to the media dissecting celebrities and character assassinating celebrities in order to sweep environmental, racial, and social ills under the rug. You guys have already read that article from my old one.
Yeah, we discussed last year on the show. We did a whole episode on that, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, remember that.
So, so it's back up, along with a lot of my other articles from my old Substack. Kanye West's resentment of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, a reappraisal of Stevie Wonder's 1980s catalog, and I'll have something on Michael for the 25th, probably from my old Substack, and be on the lookout at some point in the near future. I will be posting 2 pieces that I'm working hard on. One of them is my first foray into poetry, so to speak. It's called Should We Let the Robots Take Over, where I do a sort of poetic way of asking about hip hop culture in the wake of the emergence of AI and and how a lot of hip hop's biggest figures have been doing criminal and detrimental activity. And I'm working on a passion project that's tentatively called The Passion of the King of Pop, Michael Jackson's Pop Culture Ascension Through Christ Consciousness, where I talk about how Michael Jackson used Christ consciousness and used scripture to elevate himself to heights that nobody had seen before, and why he was ascended higher than other people, even with the subtext of the history of Black artists specifically, incorporating scripture and religion into their music and their presentation. So that's what I'm working on right now. That most likely will be on the Moving Shrine. If it's somewhere else, I'll let you know, but that's what I got going on right now. I'm back on Twitter. You can follow me at Twitter at Headphone Addict with the number 1. Everywhere else, it's just plain Headphone Addict on Threads and on Instagram.
Fellas, great job as always, man. It's a great first episode of the series. Looking forward to more of these with you guys. So until next one, we can't wait.